Hello, and welcome to another Center for Progressive Urban Politics podcast. I am your host, Kevin Lynn, and today is Sunday, March the 31st. And as is often the case, I am joined by my colleague, Steve Lamb from Altadena, California. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing real good, Kevin. Good afternoon to you from sunny Southern California, where it's a blisteringly cold, average 80 degrees today.
Wow, you guys are kind of getting back to normal there after a pretty cold winter.
Yeah, they say rain's coming Thursday, though.
Ah, okay. Well, we actually got some sun here today, finally. It's just been a wet year for us.
Good. Well,
here on the East Coast.
Speaking of rain.
Yes.
When it rains, it pours, Kev.
Yeah, like when it rains revelations, it like pours revelations and disclosures. This has been a crazy month. And what I really want to talk today about, Steve, and you there in Los Angeles, you probably have more insight into it than a lot of people who've barely commented on it. And that's the Ed Buck case in Los Angeles. I remember the first time he had recently popped up on the radar, we talked a lot about it, and he's back for a second round. Do you want to, I'm going to just share our screen here real fast. I'll pull up the article in the LA Times. Okay, here we go. So can you see that? Ed Buck?
That's not the LA Times, that's the other one.
Okay.
Oh, here it is, right here. Yeah, Ed Buck.
I'm sorry. Let me stop share and I will go back. Okay, I will share my screen here. There we go.
Let's just start talking about Dear Ed. There we go.
Yeah, here we go. Ed Buck waited 15 minutes to call 911 in second death at his home, coroner's report says.
You know, Ed, I want to start this by saying that, you know, I have a lot of friends on the left. I am in the left. One of the things I really object to is all the blonde, blue-eyed, trust fund, so-called activists who are always screaming at me that I need to check my privilege.
Right. Which
I never had any of. But Ed is like one of the most privileged guys on earth. His family was relatively well off in Arizona, where he's from.
Right, because initially, I guess he was born in Ohio. The family moved to Arizona, and he went to a private Catholic school there. So it wasn't like they were poor. Probably not. I don't know if they were rich or anything, but you know, certainly able to go to private. He was able to go to private school.
Well, and Kev, you know, I don't know how familiar you are with Arizona in the old days, but I suspect pretty familiar.
Mm-hmm. Having lived there for a little while.
Yes, and certainly in the 60s, 70s, for most people, it was not a good place to be gay, but Mr. Buck was gay from a young age and knew he was gay and acted out on being gay, was even arrested for fondling a friend in public while he was gay, which doesn't seem like the kind of thing you would do in Arizona, but eventually.
Right, it kind of shows you how, a friend of mine, Mary Lou Stanley, who I worked for when I was working with Perot there. And Mary Lou is this amazing woman. And her statement when it came to politics in Arizona was, it's all fence posts and six shooters.
Well, and certainly until maybe 2000, 2004, somewhere in there, that was the case. I mean, it used to be when I would visit the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture in Arizona, you could tell who the people were who were really native Arizonans because they were wearing cowboy boots and bolo ties.
Right.
And things have changed in Arizona. You don't see bolo ties anymore.
No, probably only at like the Indian trading posts and places like that.
Yeah, it's only the non-natives that wear them now. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so that's where Mr. Buck's from, and he developed a company that had some little small app, and he got bought out.
Yeah, bought out for $1 million. So he became, you know, in the 80s, he made $1 million in profit off of that sale of that company.
Right, and you know, you can invest $1 million and safely get a $40,000 return every year on that. So he moved to West Hollywood. And before though he moved to West Hollywood, before his company, he he, he helped recall or started the recall of Governor Meekum.
Right. That was because Meekum was only in office a short while. And I think Meekum's big issue, and having tangentially been, I got in Arizona after the Meekum time. I was actually there during the Fife-Symington times.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was actually kind of pulled into an orbit because the thing that really fueled that recall and was Meekum's stand on refusing to honor Martin Luther King Day.
Right. That was a big deal in Arizona politics. And Ed Buck, you know, to his credit, was one of the people who helped bring Meekum down for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was an early activist, and my guess is it probably established for him the power of activism, you know, when applied properly.
And so then he moves to California. He moves to West Hollywood. He runs for the West Hollywood City Council. He doesn't get elected. And he becomes a major donor in California electoral politics. Over the last 10 years, he's donated $116,000 to Democratic Party candidates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, $3,000 to Hillary Clinton, $1,000 here, $500 there.
You know, it's funny. Years ago, you and I were having that conversation about how you really don't have to spread a lot of money around, particularly on the state level, to create an aura of gravitas when you start walking into politicians' offices.
You know, $1,000 a year will pretty much get you whatever you want from your state assemblyman.
Yeah, they're going to take your calls.
Yeah, you know, $1,000 once a year for 3 or 4 years, and suddenly they remember who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so he's been a major donor. At the same time, he's developed a really peculiar perversion. He has this thing where he likes to have black men inject themselves with methamphetamine and watch them get high. That's
interesting.
That's his kink.
He has a fetish. Now, this has happened twice, though, Steve. Twice.
Well,
I mean,
this
goes beyond the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He's injected a lot of black men with methamphetamine, apparently, but 2 of them have died in his living room.
Right. That's what I mean. 2 of them have died in his living room. This kind of goes beyond the live boy, dead hooker thing. You know, you think dead boy in a
dead boy in Mr. Buck's apartment. So the first young man was Gamel Moore, and he was 26 years old, and he died in July of 2017.
So these are adults.
He was an adult. He was 26 years old. Young gay black man. And so he dies in Mr. Buck's apartment. And while the sheriffs are there investigating the scene, they find methamphetamine, they find hypodermic needles and syringes in the apartment. They find a black man coming desperately trying to go visit Mr. Buck, who's stopped from another young black man who's stopped from visiting him. They find Mr. Moore's backpack. Now, this is amazing because when they find Mr. Moore's backpack, they take it into custody. They don't inventory it.
Wait a minute. They take his backpack, which is evidence.
Yes.
And a backpack probably full of evidence.
Had all kinds of stuff in it, I'm sure. They take it into their custody. They don't unzip it and inventory it. It had inside of it Mr. Moore's sort of autobiography, his diary.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Moore's diary talks extensively about Ed Buck injecting him with methamphetamine.
Wow. Now, how did all this see light of day?
Well, the backpack got given to the mother.
Okay.
The mother read the diary, went back to the sheriffs with an activist, and that activist who will just beat my butt when she realizes I can't. Jasmine Canick.
Oh, okay, right. Mm-hmm.
Jasmine. So apparently somehow Jasmine and the mother made contact. They went to the police. They tried to get the police to reopen the investigation. The police were like, "Gee, there's no chain of custody on this diary." You know, the diary is written in the young man's own hand, and so they just kind of didn't proceed with Mr. Buck's prosecution. So this last January 7th, a man named Timothy Dean, another black man who was 55 years old, still 10 years younger than Ed Buck. Mr. Dean came to Mr. Buck's apartment. Mr. Buck's testimony is that Mr. Dean was already high on methamphetamine and he just died there on Mr. Buck's couch. And poor Mr. Buck valiantly tried to save him and he died. But really, there's nothing to see here.
Wow.
And, you know, this is an amount of privilege that I, as an allegedly Caucasian person, I can't imagine this level of privilege. I can't imagine one guy dies in my house and they find drugs and syringes and needles in my house, and I'm not so far under the basement of the jail that I never see the light of day. But the second guy has died. And this is what the sheriff's lieutenant for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, he's their spokesperson, Derek Alfred, had to say. It's suspicious. This has happened twice now. So we're going to conduct a thorough investigation to determine if it's criminal in nature. I mean, what the hell?
And anyone else without that level of protection. Do you recall we were in the city of Compton? It was like 5 years ago. We sat and interviewed a woman who was exposing a lot of wrongdoing, possible corruption, really heavy-handed treatment by the Compton Police Department and the police at the local high school.
Right. It was related to corruption at the high school, and the Compton police had gotten involved in intimidating her family to cover up the corruption at the high school.
And they had raided her house, you know, punched a bunch of holes in it and found nothing. And on the way out the door, they said to her, the next time we come back, we will find something. And you can bet they would have all been hauled off to the pokey.
Yeah. But, you know, apparently if you donate money to the district attorney's campaign or to the city councilman's campaign or to the supervisor's campaign or the assemblyman's campaign or the state senator and governor's campaign or all of them like Mr. Buck has done.
I want to go a little further with that, Steve. And I'm going to pull up this article. This was in the New York Times today.
Okay.
You know, the headline reads, 2020 Democrats love small donors, but some really love big donors too. And then it goes on to talk about...
You know, it's amazing you say that because 3 Democratic Party candidates are all in Los Angeles today talking to big major donors looking for big major money.
Yeah, they want the $2,800. They want the PAC money.
They want the $20,000 people, you know, couples who are like forking over big bucks. Yeah.
Yeah, so here we go. That it's all about the money. And when you look at the privilege, the ability to circumvent the law,
well, you know, that they're saying that the top money raiser right now in the Democratic Party is this guy named Beto O'Rourke.
Right. Like 6 million so far.
Yeah. Now Beto, I think, is the poster child for white male privilege. I mean, this dweezil, you know, got arrested for drunk driving, and he's running for president on a platform of complete total self-righteousness. As far as I can tell, he's never done anything interesting in his life except run for politics and wear a dress while wearing a beard and playing in a punk rock band. And somehow he's got $6 million in his campaign chest. And I don't get it. There's no there.
No, there isn't. And perhaps there's not supposed to be. Because when you think about how this money is ultimately used, I mean, everyone who gives money, I think, has the understanding that they will get some, ultimately becomes a quid pro quo, even if that pro quo is, materializes somewhere way down the road.
Well, they say it's for access, right? And just try to go meet your congressman if you've never given him a few $100s.
Right.
Just try to go. I mean, unless you're like a real pain in the ass activist like I was on local issues, just try to meet with your city councilman. Just try to meet with Adam Schiff if he's your congressman. Good luck with that.
Yep, particularly like in big states, big cities. There are just too many impediments, and frankly, when you look at, for instance, let's say like a look at Los Angeles County, for instance, population has grown significantly since the early 1900s, but that was the last time that they increased the number of county supervisors.
They didn't actually increase the number of county supervisors. What they did is they cut the county in thirds.
Oh, that's right.
So Orange County and Imperial County used to be part of LA County, and they chopped those two pieces off and gave them each a county board of supervisors. We still have 5 supervisors, which is how many supervisors we had when we had 250,000 people in Los Angeles County.
Wow, and now I think the county has about 12. The city has like 3 point something million. I think the
4
county
million
has
basically, and the county has 11.
Yeah, 11 million people.
Yeah.
So you have way less democracy than you did.
We would have 45
ago.
supervisors if we had the same amount of democracy as when the county was founded.
Yeah. So you need the money to buy the privilege to get the access. While we're on this while we're talking about privilege and access, we have to, take this conversation to another big headline from this last week, and that is Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett essentially gets to walk from the looks of it.
Mr. Smollett's very interesting because on the surface you would go, well, he's black and he's male and he's gay. And so you go, well, he can't possibly have any privilege, right? Well, it turns out Mr. Smollett is not exactly who you would assume he is when you first look at him. His mother was very close friends with Julian Bond. And Julian Bond was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, was a very high profile African-American politician. He became a United States ambassador at one point. And, the fact that he's friends with Julian Bond doesn't necessarily mean he's privileged. I mean, I'm sure our friend Frank knew Julian Bond. I know my good friend Michael Canfield knew Julian Bond. But Mr. Smollett's mother was a very, very good friend of Mr. Bond, was also a very close friend of Angela Davis. In fact, Mr. Smollett celebrates Mother's Day with his mother and Angela Davis, according to himself. So, we're looking at the sort of cream of the black left-wing intelligentsia there, right? With a direct connection, oddly enough, to our friends at the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I just pulled up a picture of, this is a picture of Tina Chen.
Well, Tina Chen, this is where it all gets like...
Now Tina Chen, if you go to her, I don't have her wiki page up in front of me, but I will go ahead and wiki her.
Well, it's really very interesting what happens with Tina Chen. So, first of all, she's the daughter of immigrants.
Right, and intelligent, very bright immigrants. Her father was a psychiatrist, her mother was a scientist, and she went to high school with the woman who eventually became Rahm Emanuel's wife.
Interesting. We'll get back to Rahm and all of this later. So, and she went to Northwestern. She graduated from Pritzker College of Law, which is like despite what they tell you about wanting to get into Harvard. If you're a lawyer, you really want to get into Pritzker because that's a better school.
She did got her bachelor's from Harvard.
Bachelor's from Harvard, but she went to the good law school.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You know, she served in the Obama White House, first as the director of public engagement, which is a job Rahm Emanuel had, and then apparently when he left that job, she went to it. And then she became the First Lady's chief of staff. Okay. Now, what's weird is your friend, Mr. Krikorian, has a lawsuit for defamation going on.
Right, because one of the things maybe we tell our audience, so where Tina Chen comes into the orbit of Smollett, Jussie Smollett, is she calls and I'll share our screen one more time.
Kim Foxx, who's the DA in Cook County.
Right. Now, Kim Foxx is the DA, as you said, that she's the DA in Cook County.
Yep.
And she is when you look at it from an electoral standpoint, you know, she crushed it in her last election. She got 58.3% in the primary and 72.6% in the general. So, you know.
That makes you wonder why George Soros is needing to give her $408,000.
That's a lot of money, you know. Now I understand, you know, Cook County, it's a bit of a cesspool when it comes to its politics, but yeah, I mean, so she's firmly entrenched in that position because she is an elected official serving as a DA. Now, Tina Chen speaks to the Smollett, or they speak to Tina. Tina speaks to Kim Foxx, and in very short order, essentially there's a deal that gets served in this whole thing. Let me go ahead and pull out of that.
Well, you know, the deal is very interesting because, you know, as you noted, they've sealed all the records of the whole investigation.
Right. So this is the deal. So in a bizarre reversal, Cook County prosecutors abruptly dropped all the charges in an indictment accusing Empire star Jussie Smollett of staging an attack in Streetville and falsely claiming he was a victim of a hate crime. Now,
you know, it's hard to tell whether those two Nigerian guys were white or were white rednecks or black, apparently.
Well, apparently the grand jury had no issue. Didn't think there was any ambiguity there. Since
they had their glasses on.
Yeah, they referred 16 charges against him. But what's wild about this. So this deal is reached, but there's a FOIA for the records, a Freedom of Information Act request. Now, typically when you do a FOIA, it takes a while to get that information. But boy, whatever, I guess the Tribune and other media outlets did the FOIA, but they got their information like a couple days. So before the records could be sealed and only partially redacted, the press had all the information. So
the police were too eager to hand it over.
I think so. I think they felt that they were kind of being hosed in this whole deal. And
well,
that's where
I believe, because just the denial letter, just the go pound sand letter that you get in FOIA cases always comes in after the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and heavily redacted pound sand.
Yeah.
So here's Tina Chen, you know, playing the fixer. Because
But what's really interesting is, okay, here's Jussie Smollett. He's got a relationship with one of the founders of the SPLC, right? At the same time he's doing whatever it is he did in Chicago, at the same time that's going on, Chen is taking over or becoming a part of the SPLC and doing the sensitivity training.
Right. Well, I just pulled that article up, and it states, days after it fired co-founder Morris Dees for undisclosed misconduct issues, the Southern Poverty Law Center hired a Chicago-based lawyer well-versed in gender and racial equality issues to review its workplace environment and policies. And there's a picture of Tina Chen. Tina Chen, a former White House official and Chicago-based lawyer, has been retained to review the SPLC's workplace culture and practices. So,
yeah,
please go ahead. I mean,
So I'm looking at all that and I'm going, well, wait a second. The same time she's working for the SPLC, she also just kind of makes a phone call to the Cook County DA on behalf of Smollett, because I guess she knows some members of the family. We don't even know what members of the family she knows yet.
Right.
And it ends up that his files get deep sixed.
Right, because they are sealed. And what's amazing, I read in another article, the rapidity at which they are being pulled from servers at this point. Because usually when, as what the one article stated, there wasn't even a paper trail to the plea that was agreed upon.
Yeah,
and moving so fast.
It takes months. I mean, it takes county systems months to like get rid of the electronic records of charges, even if a case has been expunged.
Mm-hmm.
And here the case hasn't been expunged, and it's just disappeared. And that's warp speed, Captain.
Yikes!
I'm giving you warp 7. That's all she's got. That's all she's got. I'm giving you warp 7. I don't think I can get you anymore. That's the kind of speed we're looking at for government.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, this is pretty amazing. Now,
so Smollett's expunged, but then it turns out that we can't find out why Morris Dees and why Cohen were let go at SPLC. Apparently, those personnel records have been deep sixed as part of whatever agreement may have been reached with them. And I'm wondering if those personnel records being sealed will affect Mr. Krikorian's discovery.
Right. For those who don't know, it was back in January, the Center for Immigration Studies filed a lawsuit against the Southern Poverty Law Center. And essentially it basically accused them under the RICO statutes of labeling them a hate group and trying to prevent them from doing what they do. And they're only asking for like $60,000 in the lawsuit. So what they want is was for the Southern Poverty lawsuit to stop its practices.
Well, they wanted to take discovery.
Right.
Because, in taking discovery, they knew that they were going to open up so many cans of worms, it was going to look like, Worm Central Supermarket.
Now, enter the fixer, Tina Chen. So Morris Dees, the co-founder, and really the ideologue, the money, the guy, the cash, the guy that just turned that cash machine on. Their president, Michael Cohen, their chief counsel, are all shown the door very quickly without a full public disclosure as to why.
Well, we don't even know why Dees is gone. We just know that he had inappropriate contact with staff over the decades, whatever that means.
So there's a lawsuit going on there. Now, what if all those records are sealed, as you had just mentioned? They can't become part of the discovery.
Exactly. And it would take a very smart fixer to figure out how to do that.
And hence the intersectionality of Tina Chen.
We have a smart fixer. Yeah. And I'm also wondering, and this is going to sound like crazy conspiratorial stuff, right? But what if what we've been told about Mr. Smollett is totally incorrect?
What do you mean, Steve?
Well, what if he wasn't looking out to advance his own career? What if, since his mom's an ideologue, right? Since they're connected to the Southern Poverty Law Center, since the Southern Poverty Law Center has declared war on President Trump's policies, they've actually issued a statement that says we declare war on President Trump's policies. Well, What if he was doing that whole people with MAGA hats attacked me and tried to pour bleach on me and called me anti-gay slurs? What if he was doing that as part of a publicity program for groups in the left to discredit Trump?
So he wasn't doing it he wasn't motivated by personal greed, which to me always, when I hear something in the news and I register a level of dissonance, which is what happened to me when I heard the motive.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, you're earning, I think, $65,000 a show, something like that, which is pretty darn good.
20 shows a year, right?
Pretty darn good money.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, and you're going to put yourself at risk for something like this.
That doesn't make any sense, but it would make sense if you were doing it as part of an ideological thing to attempt to sway public opinion against various policies of the president and the president.
And this would have had it worked out the way they had planned. It was poorly executed, but yeah, it certainly would have done that.
Well, and he's still positioning himself as if it actually happened, and as if he didn't hire the Nigerian guys, and as if he really is a victim. I mean, he's going right along with the script as if he hadn't been exposed.
Wow, that's some acting.
Turns out he's underpaid after all.
It's an interesting theory, because when you think about the intersectionality, in this case, the person is Tina Chen. She's a fixer, is the way I look at it. And she's been called in to fix the Southern Poverty Law Center. And she was called in to fix the Smollett thing before it could go down the rabbit hole that it was on the trajectory for. I mean, that's some stuff. Imagine what you have to do to get someone who was the chief of staff to the first lady involved in something like this. When the truth came out about Smollett, I mean, after the two Nigerian guys were interviewed by the grand jury, anyone and everyone would have been running away from this, not running to it.
Well, unless you were getting a lot of money, or unless there was some ideological purpose, or unless you worked for an organization that was maybe involved in the planning.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we could be on the tip of an iceberg here. Now, if all the records get expunged, it might be difficult to prove anything, but it certainly does raise its grounds for conjecture.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this did happen, but when the dots start going together, it's something that could have happened. Mm-hmm. And perhaps Mr. Krikorian will find out. Perhaps this is a much bigger fish, perhaps even a whale that no one even saw coming.
There you go.
It smells like fish.
Looks like fish. Must be fish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, Steve, that's interesting. So, well, there you go. That's privilege at work, and it's not
privilege.
Yeah, and it's based on class at the end of the day. It's not really about race. Is used to create the fissures, create the divisions, to foment class warfare, keep the people that should be uniting together apart. And this is how it works. If you're one of the privileged, you get to skirt the law. I don't think you or I, if we had someone do a drug overdose in our homes twice, would be walking around without having posted lots and lots of bail.
Oh, I could never afford the bail, what the bail would be on that. I mean, even if I sold my house, I don't think I could afford what the bail would be on that. So,
yeah.
It's like, please. And, Mr. Smollett's case, I kind of look at it as, a lot of people were for throwing the book at him, sending him to jail. I was like, oh, he's stupid. He's never going to work again. Everyone's figured out who he is.
Yeah, and I can understand too. I mean, if he were to get a felony charge, and I've heard this, a few people have opined on this, you don't get to work as an actor again because you could never do an international shoot. You might have trouble getting on a plane, things of that nature. So,
well, I mean, I'm not sure that he works internationally anyway, but, you know, it just, okay, you're a doofus, right? So, but why is a fixer coming in? I mean, everybody was angry. Everyone was like, you know, shaking their spears. But really, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road, they would have just quietly gone, oh, yeah, Jussie Smollett, right?
yeah, because think about the confidence as the defendant in this. You would have had to have that the fix was in and you were going to come out clean, as opposed to when they got you down there. It's like, we have the testimony from the 2 guys that you paid. We have the checks. We have them on.
Here's what I don't understand. You're committing an illegal act, right? And you pay someone with a check. You don't even go out and get cash out of your bank like over a several-week period.
Right.
You pay them. You write a personal check and you say, oh, for training. Really?
You know, obviously the guy does not have a background in crime.
No, why would he? He's you know, Julian Bond was a very upper class person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, interesting. Well, Steve, I think we've beaten that one to death. We just have to wait for, in the hope that something else will come out, because I'm not optimistic, given that records have been sealed. Fortunately, there was the FOIA request, and what is out is out. But information is being pulled from servers as we speak. It will eventually, I'm sure, get expunged, and that will be that.
Well, I think that we're going to see a lot more of this. I think Mr. Krikorian, if he's successful in his discovery, will accidentally stumble into Mr. Smollett's name here, there, and everywhere. And that this story has many more facets than even a conspiratorial mind like mine can dream of.
You know, I'm buying the popcorn now. This will be fun to watch.
It'll be fun, and time will tell.
Very good, Steve. Well, hey, talking about time, I think we're running out of time right now. But
Right.
This was another great weekly wrap up with you on some very interesting topics. I think next week will be, with the way things have been going, I think who knows what next week will bring.
You know, the revelations that are happening, it's like everybody's corruption, Republican, Democrat, Green, it's all going to come to the surface, because this little box that we're looking at just makes research so much easier. And people are really stupid on it. They don't hide the stuff they're doing very well at all.
No, they really don't. It's just too convenient in so many respects.
Yep.
Well, very good. Well, I want to, Steve, thank you for joining me today. I want to thank our audience. Glad you could join us. If you liked our video today, please give us a thumbs up. Better yet, subscribe to our channel. That way you'll get a notification every time we put up a new podcast. Have a great weekend.